set against the backdrop of a world shrouded in secrecy, where the supernatural thrives alongside humanity unbeknownst to many. Fates Entwined. The Keeper's Embrace unfolds an exhilarating tale of love, treachery, and the unyielding pursuit of redemption. At the epicenter stands Sophia, an unassuming woman whose ordinary life belies her extraordinary destiny, and Xavier Layton, a werewolf plagued by a relentless curse that threatens to consume him. Drawn together by threads of fate, Xavier, driven by a hunger deeper than his primal instincts, shadows Sophia to unravel the key to his salvation within her. Unbeknownst to her, Sophia possesses the title of gatekeeper, a position that holds the power to alter Xavier's cursed existence. Their lives intertwine in a dance of destiny as they delve into a world of ancient scrolls, enigmatic portals, and the lurking dangers of the supernatural underworld. As Sophia is initiated into this hidden realm, she discovers her own strength, her identity as a gargoyle, and the responsibility that comes with guarding the balance between realms. With each discovery, the stakes escalate, introducing complex alliances and adversaries, such as Alexia, the fierce protector of mystical treasures, and Ren, a vengeful mermaid with a vendetta that spans centuries. Fates Entwined. The Keeper's Embrace masterfully weaves a tapestry of suspense, passion, and adventure, challenging perceptions of love and loyalty. The bond forged between Sophia and Xavier becomes their beacon amidst the storm, a testament to the transformative power of love that transcends boundaries. Together, they confront not only their personal demons, but also the sinister forces that threaten to tear apart the fragile equilibrium of their world. This riveting narrative delves into the depths of sacrifice, exploring the intricate web of choices and consequences that define one's path. With each twist and turn, Fates Entwined, The Keeper's Embrace keeps readers ensnared, questioning the true meaning of fate and the extent to which love can defy even the most formidable of curses. Prepare to embark on a journey that blurs the lines between light and shadow, revealing that sometimes, it is in the darkest of places that the brightest love shines. Chapter 1. Del. Excuse me, could I ask you for a favor? I froze as his deep, gravelly voice washed over me. It was melodic but also harsh in a way that made me want to hear him sing. I'd been listening to his mumbled conversation with the guy next to him for the past hour while I waited for my turn to perform. But hearing it out loud and directed at me was so different, yet somehow familiar. Like I'd heard it 1,000 times before when I knew I'd never met him. I turned to the voice and found a set of brilliant hazel eyes pointed right at me. The man smiled, his teeth bright next to the dark hair on his face. Stood there staring as I tried to figure out how a man could be too scruffy to be beautiful. Or maybe too beautiful to be scruffy. But damn. He cleared his throat and I blinked at him. Huh. His smile got wider. I was hoping I could ask you for a favor. His accent was thick, and his words dripped through me like honey. What's that? I finally said. He sat back on his stool and nodded to the drink in his hand. My buddy here is trying to tell me that his craft beer is better than my PBR. I was hoping you could set him straight. I shook my head in an effort to clear some of the haze. When I got a look at the bottles they were holding, I smirked. Well, I'm really more of a vodka Red Bull girl myself, but that's a wicked weed IPA he's got. You really can't do better than that here in Asheville. The man's smile was still wide as the guy behind him snorted. Told you, he grumbled, but the man didn't seem to hear. Instead, he lifted his hand and called for the bartender. Can I get a vodka Red Bull, please? He asked, eyes still on me. I pursed my lips as the guy behind the bar poured my drink and slid it over. That might be the most creative way anyone's ever bought me a drink before, I said as I took a sip. His eyes lit up even brighter. I'll take creative. I'm Theo, he said and extended a hand toward me. What's your name? Del, I said as I reached for him. The moment our fingers touched, a lightning bolt of heat shot through my body. The hair on my arm stood on end, and my skin sizzled as he wrapped his hand around mine. Nice to meet you, Delaware. He had to feel the buzzing, right? This low-level vibration that started where he was still touching me and spread to every inch of my body. I shook my head again as I pulled my hand out of his. Thanks for the drink, Theo. I picked it up and took another swallow, hoping he didn't notice the way I was still shaking. I was surprised to hear you prefer vodka Red Bull to moonshine, he continued. He was referring to the alcohol werewolves preferred to drink. It was much stronger than human liquor, which did next to nothing for us. This meant he was a werewolf and he knew I was one too. I raised my brows and stared at him over my glass as I took another long sip. I like to have a clear head when I perform. That's rare for a musician. I shrugged and set the drink down. Theo nodded toward the stage. So you're auditioning today? I glanced to the front of the room as the next act set up. My stomach knotted deep inside, but instead of causing fear, all it did was make me more anxious to get out there myself. This gig was a big deal. Maybe the biggest deal of my life. Apparently, a popular country rock band from Nashville was in town on tour and lost their opening act. They were holding emergency auditions for a replacement, and I wanted to be it. Yeah, it should be my turn soon. What about you? He smiled again, and my heart slammed against my ribcage. I've already tried out. Damn it. I was 10 minutes late because I'd misplaced my keys again, and I guess I missed his performance. I was thankful I hadn't lost my turn, but now I regretted not catching his set. How do you do? His grin got even wider, his eyes damn near sparkling at me. I killed it. Strangely, his cockiness wasn't a turnoff like it should have been. I'd been around enough musicians to have tons of experience with big-headed wannabe rockstars. For some reason, Theo's arrogance only made me laugh. Good for you. What are you performing? I shrugged. Not sure yet. Theo chuckled, the sound full of disbelief. You came to an audition and you don't even know what you're playing. I shrugged again. Yeah, it's kinda how I work. If I'm performing for a crowd, I usually make a set list in advance, but if I'm trying out for something, I don't make up my mind about what I'm singing until right before I go on stage. His smile lingered as he shook his head back and forth. Why? I pursed my lips as I tried to put my thoughts into words. It's like I have to feel it, you know? I need to be at my absolute best, so I sing whatever's on my mind and in my soul at that moment. I sighed as I took another sip of my drink. It's never the same song twice, and it's always a surprise to me, too. Theo laughed. That's crazy. Guess I'm crazy then. His strange-colored eyes flashed with humor, but before he could say anything else, the next act started playing and we both turned to watch. The Asheville music scene was small, so of course I recognized the duo on stage. They were playing a Florida Georgia Line song, and my hips started swaying without my permission. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Theo inch closer, his eyes on me again. You like this song? I like almost all songs. What about the band you're auditioning to open for? Do you like their songs? I don't know them that well, but I like the one they have on the radio right now. In fact, it had been stuck in my head all week because the local stations had it on repeat. He seemed to like that answer because he took another step closer and then turned to watch the guys performing. When they were done, we all clapped and they left the stage. What did you think? Theo asked. Somehow he'd gotten closer. Now I could smell the hops on his breath and, beneath that, his true scent. It was woody cedar and the metallic scent of steel, and I instantly knew he was a guitarist. They did great. But I frowned at him. How do you know there's a but? A good musician knows there's always something that can be better, and a great musician usually knows what it is. His smile was so wide as he stared at me, and I honestly forgot to breathe for a moment. I dragged some precious oxygen back into my lungs. How do you know I'm a good musician? Just a hunch, he said with a wink. A simple flick of his eyelid shouldn't have made my heart pound like that, but it did. I cleared my throat and looked away. I had to if I was going to get a coherent sentence out. They work well together and always do a great job, but I think they could have picked a song that fit them better. Like what? I turned to give him an exasperated look, and he just laughed. I've got a feeling you already know what they should have sang. Am I wrong? I licked my lips and his eyes darted to my mouth. I saw them perform Stay a Little Longer by the Brothers Osborne once, and it was amazing. Theo's bright eyes met mine again. That's a good song. I know. And those guys slayed it last time. He smiled again, and it was like every time he did that, he got more good looking. What about this girl? He asked with another nod at the stage. I tore my gaze away from his to glance at the front of the room. When I did, I found one of my least favorite people in Asheville. Oh, I deadpanned. That's Britt Samuel. She's good. Theo laughed so loud a few people turned to stare at us. He stifled his chuckles and took another step closer, lowering his voice more. You are an awful liar. I frowned up at him, willing his woodsy scent to stop clouding my thoughts. I'm not lying. She is good. Okay, then where's the but? I rolled my eyes. There's no but. You're lying again. A soft growl rumbled out of my mouth, and Theo had to press his lips together to hold back another laugh. Fine, I spat. She oversings, she's usually a half beat too slow and she's a bitch, okay? His eyes were bright with humor, and I could tell it was taking an immense effort for him to hold it in. Why is she a bitch? He murmured, moving even closer as our conversation became more private. I sighed. She thinks there's only room for one female singer-songwriter in Asheville and she's sure it should be her. Is she right? I turned to him with a glare, and he held up his hands. About there only being enough room for one of you here, he explained, his lips twitching with another grin. The fight flew right out of me and my shoulders slumped. I don't know. Maybe. It does kinda seem like any time we're both up for something, they always pick me or her and never both. That truth was a tough pill to swallow, especially when all I had to wash it down with was the hopelessness of my situation. Because I wasn't like Brit. I never wanted to be the most popular female artist in the city. I wanted so much more. Asheville would never be enough for me. I'd never learn enough, grow enough, accomplish enough staying here. I needed to spread my wings and fly far away from this place. But there were 4 reasons I never did, and each one of them started with one of my siblings. Hell, now I'd have to add Ellie into the mix too. And her kids. And Callie's kids. And shit, now B was having a whole fucking litter. All those reasons added up to too many excuses to stay. But let me guess, they mostly picked you? He asked after a quiet moment, breaking me out of my thoughts. My eyes darted to his and away before he could read the truth. But I guess I wasn't fast enough. I thought so, he said, his deep voice even closer than before. I fought off a shiver as I took a half step back and turned toward the stage. Brit was just getting ready to start and I wanted to watch out of respect. If nothing else. She predictably chose a big Shania Twain ballad and just barely hung on to every note. It was honestly kind of hard to watch. My skin began buzzing again as Theo leaned close, his hard chest bumping into my arm. You're right. You're so much better than her. I bit my lips to keep the smile off them as I turned to him. You've never heard me play. He leaned back and shrugged. Call it a hunch. You seem to have a lot of those. His grin was back and as wide as ever. With you? Yeah. My stomach pinched sharply as he stared at me with his fathomless hazel eyes. That seemed to be every shade possible. Blue, green, brown, amber, turquoise. I couldn't just focus on one color because they all mixed so seamlessly. I finally ripped my gaze away from his in time to watch Brit take an exaggerated bow for the smattering of applause she received. I might have felt bad for her, but she didn't even seem to notice as she strutted off the stage. Theo leaned in to say something else, but his voice was drowned out by another. Del McCoy, someone announced over the PA system, and my heart beat hard once, before taking off at a sprint. That's me, I muttered to Theo as I tossed back the rest of my drink and grabbed my things. Do you know what you're singing yet? He asked with what sounded like equal parts humor and worry in his tone. I shrugged and turned to head for the stage. I'll figure it out, I called over my shoulder. I didn't bother taking a last look because I knew it would just distract me. Right now I needed to tune into the multitude of songs swirling around my head and figure out which one was loudest, which one had the most to say to me. This was an important audition, and the fact that I still hadn't figured out what I was singing had my palms sweating despite what I'd said to Theo. Wiped them against my jeans as discreetly as I could, as I made my way through the venue. Excuse me, I muttered as I skirted past a group of people, my head still in snarls. Why was I struggling so much to pick a song today? It was never this hard for me. I usually woke up the morning of an audition already knowing what I wanted to sing, but my muses had been strangely silent all day. I dug deep for what I was feeling most connected to, but all I kept seeing were Theo's hazel eyes. It was like he'd eclipsed my day before I'd even met him. Before I knew it, I'd reached the stairs. I tried to pay attention to where I was walking because the last thing I wanted to do was trip on my way up, but just like I'd manifested it, the toe of my boot got caught on the top step and I went stumbling forward. I caught myself with a chuckle and threw back my shoulders before heading toward the center of the stage. When I reached the microphone, I stared out into the crowd and gave them a grin. There's something wrong with your stairs. The tiny crowd roared with laughter, And I smiled harder at them. The feeling that came with being on stage raced through my veins, invigorating me and focusing me all at once. This was where I was born to be. This was what I was born to do. Even though I knew that with every fiber of my being, it was easy to doubt, especially after a string of things not going my way. But when I got the chance to perform, even for just a few people, it was enough to remind me. Most of the people watching were obscured by darkness, but I knew exactly where to find him. Without permission, my eyes started scanning the crowd, looking for one shadow in particular. Theo was still leaning against the bar where I left him, his eyes shining bright even from this far away. My smile grew just for him before I turned to pull out my guitar. The songs in my head were still spinning around, but there was one that slowed down each time it passed. It wasn't one of my stronger songs, but it was fun and upbeat, and I knew I could make it sound great acoustic. I also knew the reason it stuck out was standing across the room and hadn't taken his eyes off me. Fuck it, I mumbled before turning around and approaching the microphone. Again. Hey y'all. This is Blank Space. Chapter 2. Theo. Del McCoy. Her name rang through the venue like it had been ringing in my head since I heard it yesterday. Our manager, Mason, mentioned there was a female werewolf auditioning, and we'd all been hoping she was a good enough fit and we could take her on the road. It just made things easier when we toured with other wolves. What I got was so much more. That's me, she said before bringing her drink to those bright red lips and draining the rest. I watched entranced as she calmly collected her things. It felt like our time was running out and I was anxious to hold on to every precious second. Do you know what you're singing yet? She shrugged, her crimson lips curling with a grin before she turned away. I'll figure it out, she said over her shoulder as she headed toward the stage. I watched her ass sway back and forth in her skin-tight jeans, not giving a single shit if I got caught staring. You need to close your mouth before you drool more. I snapped my jaw shut and wiped my chin as I turned to my bandmate. But did you fucking see her? Holy shit. Roman shrugged, tattooed fingers gripping his glass of whiskey. Decent tits. Fat ass, pink hair. He listed her features like he was reading a grocery list. Been there, fuck that. The rage was swift and so unexpected it shocked me silent. When the urge to knock him the fuck out was finally under control, I said, you don't know her. My voice was soft, which should have tipped him off. It didn't. Neither do you, he scoffed. My hands fisted at my sides as tiny trembles started to ripple through my body. I know she's more than tits and an ass, I growled. The fucker had the nerve to throw his head back and laugh. More since when? Is any girl more than tits and an ass? His words were like a cold bucket of water over my head. How was she under my skin like that already? Why was I already defending her to my best friend? Why did everything feel so different with her? I shook my head. Just shut the fuck up and mind your business, Roman. He laughed again, and the urge to punch him was so strong I had to grit my teeth to stop myself. This is my business. Since when is my dick your business? I seethed. Roman's blue eyes flashed with the first sign of anger. Since you decided to fuck the opening act. You know that's rule number fucking 1. She's not the opening act yet. She hasn't even auditioned. You know we'll pick her just because she's a wolf. My stomach twisted because deep down I knew how Del would feel about that. Shook it off as best I could. Okay, how does that affect me? I asked as I folded my arms across my chest. The glass in Roman's hand cracked down the side before he shoved it away. I don't know why I have to spell this out for you more, but I will. If you put your dick in her today and she goes on tour with us tomorrow, that's going to cause a big fucking problem for us. I opened my mouth to speak, but he kept talking. She's gonna get attached because she's a female and that's what they do. And because you're Theo Moore, you're gonna turn right around and shove your dick in someone else the first chance you get. Do you know what happens then? No. But I'm sure you're going to tell me, I deadpanned. Then I get to spend the next 8 weeks with some whiny bitch crying over your stupid ass. We have the rules for a reason. No fucking anyone on tour. You know this. I did know this. Hell, I'd created the rule after our drummer Walker almost knocked up a roadie. But this was different. Del was different. I didn't just want to fuck her, I wanted to know her. I couldn't say that to Roman though, so I just shook my head. Yeah, I muttered as I turned toward the stage again. Just as I did, a gasp rang out from the crowd, and I looked up at Del as she tripped on the steps leading to the stage. I jumped to my feet. ready to sprint up there and catch her my damn self, but she regained her balance at the last second. A small smile spread across my face as I watched her stand up straighter and strut toward the microphone. "There's something wrong with your stairs," she said, her smoky voice instantly making me hard. The people around me laughed with her, and my smile grew. She was clearly born for this shit. Her bright blue eyes scanned the crowd until they found me, and I swear my damn heart almost jumped out of my chest. Del's red lips spread into a wide grin, and she was so fucking gorgeous in that moment I wished I could freeze. My eyes stayed glued to her, just like everyone else in that room. I didn't need to look to know the entire venue was as hypnotized as I was. Every sway of her hips, every toss of her wavy hair was so effortlessly attractive. It was like she oozed sex appeal from every single pore in there. Wasn't a person in the room that didn't want her. I could guarantee that. She pulled out an old acoustic Taylor and turned back toward the mic. The leather strap went over her neck as she grabbed the stand and pulled it toward her lips. "Hey y'all," she said, her voice echoing off the walls and sending chills straight down my spine. "This is Blank Space." Del plucked the opening notes of the Taylor Swift song quietly for a moment, her head ducked to watch her busy fingers. When she finally looked back up, there was a twinkle in her eyes. She opened her mouth and started singing, and my entire world shrank down to just one point, just one person. My eyes felt stuck open as I watched her lips move and her hand alternate between strumming the chords and tapping out the beat on the belly of her guitar. This song wasn't easy to play live and especially solo, but she handled it with ease. If I didn't know better, I would have thought she'd spent weeks practicing. The truth was she'd just chosen it on a whim. Before I knew what was happening, I was moving my heavy leather boots, dragging me forward as my gaze stayed stuck on the goddess performing on stage. "Remember the rules," Roman's deep voice rumbled behind me, but I ignored him. Nothing mattered but Delaware. I couldn't see anything but her, couldn't hear anything but the sweet notes falling from her sweeter lips. When I finally made it to the front of the crowd, Del grabbed the mic, letting her voice and the steady tap of her fingers on the guitar bring us through the bridge. The beat got faster as she sang louder until she hit the crescendo, and she stopped playing. I don't think one soul took a breath the entire time she sang that one long note. It ended as fast as it started, and Del started playing again, effortlessly finishing the song, and then shooting a wink at the audience. Pride pumped through my veins as I glanced around the large room and found every pair of eyes focused on her. When I looked back, her cheeks were pink, her blue eyes shining as she thanked the crowd and packed up her guitar. My feet started moving again, and I didn't even question when they led me backstage. "More," someone called as I passed by. I spared them a wave, but that was all. I needed to get to Delaware. I needed to see her and smell her, and fuck, if I could just get one goddamn finger on that woman, maybe I could finally relieve this ache in my chest. A secondary wave of applause sounded from beyond the curtains, and I smiled. Because she deserved it. She was easily the most entertaining act we'd seen all day, and there was no way she wasn't getting this spot. Which meant if I wanted to fuck her, this was my only chance. Roman's warning sounded in the back of my head, but it was quiet. Something told me Del wasn't like other women, that if we agreed to a single night, we could both be mature and leave it at that. Fuck, I hoped I was right. The heavy fabric was finally pulled aside, and she appeared at the top of the stairs, face still beaming and chest heaving. She hadn't seen me yet, so I had the pleasure of watching her rush toward the steps and then think twice about her haste. I barely held in my chuckle as she gripped the railing and took one cautious step at a time. By the time she made it down, I'd had enough waiting. I was there, just off to the side of the staircase, so when she twisted her ankle on the last step, I was close enough to catch her. "Whoa there," I said as I pulled her upright. Del gasped softly before her blue eyes met mine. "Theo," she whispered, her breathing more labored than it was before. The urge to pull her closer was so strong, but I resisted. There was no telling who could see us or who would report back to the band, which meant we needed to get out of here. "What are you doing?" she asked as she pulled out of my arms and broke my train of thought. I cleared my throat to grant me an extra second to think, but nothing was coming to me. No smooth line, no quick comeback. All I had for her was the truth. "I wanted to see you." Her eyes widened, and I hurried to continue. "After you're set. I wanted to get the chance to tell you how incredible you were." Her lips twitched with a smile. "Yeah." I felt an answering grin spreading across my face. Fuck yeah. That was amazing. You really didn't practice that song before coming here. She shrugged, her smile growing. I mean, I've played it a few times, but not recently. I took a step closer. I couldn't help it. She was so captivating with her flushed cheeks and luminous eyes. It was like she was glowing and I was a helpless moth attracted to her light. It was so fucking good, I said, my voice softer now that I was so close. You were easily the best one here today. She raised a brow. I thought you killed it, she said, doing her best to imitate my deep voice but failing. A chuckle fell from my lips, the sound too strained to be happy. Hopefully. She didn't notice. Of course I did, but you were better. Dell rolled her eyes, but she was still smiling. Okay, well thanks, she said. As she turned, my pulse pounded and my throat clogged as I watched her take the first step away from me. Already it was too much. Too far. I was nowhere near ready to let her go. All right, folks. A familiar voice boomed through the PA system. That's it. For today. Callbacks will be tomorrow. I silently thanked my manager for the assist and caught up to Dell. Hey, so it sounds like you're from around here, I said as I fell into step beside her. She glanced at me out of the corner of her eye. Yes, she said slowly. I am. Great. I'm just in town for a couple nights and I've never been here. Where's good to get a couple drinks and some pizza or something? Dell pursed her lips to the side as she thought. Well, Upcountry Brewery has some pretty good pizza. Is there dancing? She shook her head like she hadn't heard me. Dancing? I smiled. Yeah, I like to dance. Dell pressed her lips tight together to stop her smile, but there was no hiding. You like to dance? She asked, disbelief coloring her tone. I took a step back and crossed my arms over my chest. Why is that so hard to believe? Her eyes darted to my thick biceps and the tattoos that peeked out from underneath my t-shirt. When she glanced back at me, there was a heat in her gaze I recognized, and it took everything in me to stop myself from touching her. You just don't seem like the type, she finally said, her voice breathier than usual. And what type is that? Her gaze was still heated, but also too intuitive as she looked me up and down. It felt like all my secrets and lies were laid bare before her. Like there was nothing I could hide from Dell. So you're looking to have a beer and a pizza and then dance? She asked, sidestepping my question. Exactly. She hummed, her lips pursed again, and I wanted nothing more than to know what they tasted like. You'd probably like Jack Jacks then, she finally said. I dragged my eyes away from her mouth, but it was hard as hell. Yeah, they're probably pretty slow at this time though. It's kinda early. That's okay. I can wait. I pulled out my phone as I tried to clear my head and ignore the way this woman scrambled it. Is that on Albemarle Street? Yep. That's it. I nodded as I tapped a few buttons and shoved my phone back in my pocket. Perfect. The Uber's gonna be here in 3 minutes. Let's go. Go. She squeaked as I grasped her elbow and started walking. Her skin buzzed hard beneath my hand, and I almost had to let go. But she was also so silky smooth beneath my callous fingers I couldn't. Damn, I wondered if the rest of her was this fucking soft. Yeah, you're not gonna let me eat alone in a strange city, are you? She rolled her eyes but didn't stop me from leading her through the back door. You're a big boy. I'm sure you'll be just fine eating alone. The heavy metal doors swung closed behind us, and I searched the alley to make sure we were alone before stepping closer to her. I leaned in, letting her spicy cinnamon scent almost burn my nose. Darlin', size is one thing I've never had to worry about. Her soft gasp was enough to make my cock stretch against my zipper. When her bright blue eyes finally met mine, I knew exactly where this night was ending. Dell smiled. Okay, why not? Chapter 3. Theo. You're lying. I'm not. I pushed my fresh drink aside and leaned across the table. We'd been at Jack's for hours and the place was finally crowded. It didn't matter though. There could have been 1,000 people inside this little dive bar, and I'd still only want to look at her. You're really trying to tell me you've fallen off stage 20 times? Asked. Dell nodded slowly as she brought a glass of moonshine to her lips. We'd moved to the heavy stuff and now it was that much harder to resist her. She tipped her head back, exposing the long silky expanse of her throat, and my mouth watered. I just knew her soft skin would taste fucking delicious. It might even be more like 25, she said as she set the glass down. I've lost count. A loud laugh shot out of me and I sat up straight again. There's no way. You can't be older than 25. You're telling me you've fallen off the stage once a year since you were born. Her blue eyes flashed with humor. I'm not 25 and I've been performing since I was a little kid. Now I've been doing at least one show a week for the past 10 years. There's been plenty of time to fall off. I shook my head slowly as I tried to wrap my mind around a werewolf being that clumsy. Her cheeks were turning pink, and although it just made her prettier, I didn't want her to feel bad about admitting that. I cleared my throat. That's nothing. One time when I was much younger and stupider, I tried to stage dive during a show, and no one caught me. No, she breathed, her eyes wide and her lips quivering. Not that. I nodded and looked down at the table. I landed wrong and broke my wrist. Couldn't play for a week. I'm still not over it. She was silent for a long moment before the giggling started. Soft at first, but the longer she laughed, the harder and louder it got until she snorted. And my eyes darted to hers. Dell froze for 1 second, her face turning bright red before she laughed again. Now she was cackling and snorting, and I couldn't help but join in, which only entertained her more. It honestly might have been the cutest thing I'd ever seen. It had been like this all night. So simple. So easy. There hadn't been one lull in our conversation, not one awkward moment between us. We were like best friends that just reunited after spending years apart, not like two strangers who just met. Then there was the attraction, the ever-present ache in my cock and pinch in my stomach as I found more to marvel at. Like the way her graceful fingers fluttered through the air whenever she spoke, like she needed to show you what she was saying and not just tell you. Or the way her blue eyes lit up when she talked about music. She was so fucking beautiful in those moments I could barely stop myself from pulling her close and getting lost in those red lips. Lips I'd been staring at all night. Lips I'd fantasized about in 100 different ways already. Lips I knew would haunt my fucking dreams if I didn't get to taste them. Oh my God. The over-exaggerated exclamation was close by and just annoying enough to pierce through the bubble surrounding me in Delaware. We both turned to find a glassy-eyed, bleach-blonde pinup girl staring at me with her phone clutched to her chest. I know you. You're Theo Moore, she yelled as she stumbled closer to our table. I glanced toward Dell to gauge her reaction to the interruption, but her face was blank. Unfortunately, I didn't know her well enough to guess what that meant. I'm Mandy. Can I get a picture? She said, her voice still too loud even, though she was standing right next to me. Sure, I said. Mandy squealed and plopped her ass on my lap. My eyes darted to Dell again, but still there was no reaction. I grabbed the girl's waist and slid her onto the bench next to me. Unfortunately, that didn't seem to deter her much. She twisted in her seat and wrapped an arm around my neck. Her tits were now only inches from my face as she pulled out her phone to take a picture. Another look at Dell didn't reveal anything more than the last 2 glances, but I had to check anyway. By now, most women would have grabbed this girl by the hair and ripped her off. Me, but Dell hadn't said a word. Not even a roll of her pretty blue eyes. I was uncomfortable, of course, but this came with the job. It didn't pay to make your fans upset, so we made sure to always stop for pictures and autographs. They just usually showed up at the end of a show, not in the middle of a date. Okay, ready? Mandy asked, her voice still too loud. I turned back to her phone and forced a smile. She snapped a couple pictures, with varying expressions on her painted face while I just counted down the seconds until it was over. In a move quicker than I'd expected from someone so drunk, Mandy twisted around and planted her lips on mine, her camera still clicking. I pulled my head back and pushed her away, but she didn't seem to mind. Instead, Mandy straightened up on the bench next to me and started scrolling through the pictures she'd just taken. My eyes jumped to Dell again, but she was staring at her own phone now, her expression bored. Oh my God, I love this one, Mandy shrieked from next to me. I winced as her voice set my teeth on edge. Okay, thanks for coming over, I said, hoping she'd take the hint. She didn't. Mandy pocketed her phone and turned to me, spinning in the seat so fast she almost fell off it. She righted herself with a giggle. Hey, you wanna buy me a drink? Not really. She laughed again, tipping her head back in an exaggerated way I'm sure she thought was sexy but wasn't. You're so funny. She jumped up from her seat and spun around to face me. Problem was, she tried to move too fast in her inebriated state and couldn't Keep up. She went tumbling to the ground like a stack of bricks, and I had to really fight off the chuckle bubbling in my chest. Dell, on the other hand, gasped and slid off her seat to help. Hey, are you okay? She asked. The girl used Dell's hand to climb to her feet, dusting off her jean skirt in the process. Of course, she said, her words slurred and her eyelids only half-masked. Dell glanced over Mandy's shoulder like she was looking for someone. Who are you here with? She shrugged. Me and my friend drove together, but I haven't seen her in a while, she said, her body swaying off-beat. Dell's eyes flashed with anger before she wrapped a hand around the girl's thin arm. Okay, you have a seat while I get you some water. Mandy shook her head, her pale face turning green. I'm gonna be sick. Dell had just enough time to spin her around before she vomited all over the bench next to her. She patiently rubbed circles on Mandy's back as her shoulders heaved. I watched in awe as Dell spoke soft, kind words to the girl who just walked over here and ignored her. Can you get her some water? Dell asked, breaking me out of my thoughts. And maybe let someone know about the mess. I jumped to my feet. Of course, I said before I hurried off to do as she asked. When I returned, Mandy was on the other side of the booth, her head resting on the table. I passed the water to Dell, who grabbed the straw out of her own drink and shoved it in the glass before holding it up for her. Here, have some of this and then we'll go get you cleaned up, she said, her voice still soft and soothing. Mandy's lips floundered for the straw before she sucked down big gulps. When she drained the cup, Dell helped her to her feet and wrapped an arm around her waist. Can you call Asheville City Cab and ask them to send Nancy? She should be working tonight, Dell said. I nodded and pulled out my phone. Got it. She gave me a soft smile that made my heart miss one whole fucking beat before she turned and disappeared into the crowd with Mandy. I shook my head and tried to focus on the job she'd given me. I found the cab company she mentioned and was able to request the driver Dell wanted. They assured me it wouldn't be longer than a 5-minute wait, so I went looking for the girls. What I found was Dell propping up an almost completely unconscious Mandy. I rushed to them and wrapped my arm around the girl's waist, taking most of her weight from Dell. Thanks, she murmured. I was having trouble being inconspicuous. She's like 8 inches taller than me. I chuckled. And she's wearing heels. Unlike Dell, who had on cowboy boots. She shook her head as we made our way through the busy bar. See? There's no way I could have just casually carried her out of here. I laughed again. Did she get sick again in there? I asked with a nod toward the bathroom. Dell rolled her eyes. No, just sassy. Sassy? She shrugged. Yeah, she was just getting into all the reasons she didn't need my help when she passed out. I stared at the side of Dell's face, not even registering the people we walked through or the shoulders that bumped into me. Why was she being so nice to this girl who had only been rude to her? What did she get out of taking care of her? It sounded cynical, but I'd learned a long time ago no one ever did anything for free. That just wasn't how the world worked. We made it out into the crisp autumn night, and the cool air seemed to revive our new friend. Where are we going? She asked, her words barely comprehensible. We called you a cab, Dell said. Mandy frowned at her before turning to me. Her expression morphed from disgruntled to something resembling sultry. It was ruined by the dried vomit still in her hair. I'm not ready to go home, she said to me. Honey, you can't even walk. Dell tried again. You need to go home and sleep this off. You need to mind your fucking business, Mandy shot back. Anxiety and rage spiked in my system as I worried about Dell's reaction, all while trying to control my own. Because right now I wanted to leave her out here to deal with her own shit. Here's Nancy, Dell said, the relief clear in her voice. She picked up her pace as a yellow minivan came to a stop out front. The passenger window rolled down as a voice came booming out. Dell McCoy, is that you? Hey, Miss Nancy, Dell crooned as she stepped up to the window. Damn girl, did you get prettier since I last saw you? Nancy asked, and I liked her already. Miss Nancy, we must need to get your eyes checked, Dell responded. Nothing wrong with my eyes, girl, she said, and Dell just shook her head. What's going on with you? Can you get my friend home safe, please? Nancy leaned across the seat to eye the girl. She's not gonna get sick in my car, is she? I think she's gotten it all out of her system, but I'll pay for any damages if she throws up again, Dell said quickly. Nancy gave her a motherly smile before she turned back to Mandy. All right. Then, get in and buckle up. We wear seatbelts in this cab. Mandy turned big brown eyes my way as I tried to disentangle myself from her. Why don't you come home with me? I don't think so. Why not? She asked, her bottom lip jutting out. I just barely held back an eye roll. Because, I said as I finally pulled free from her, you'll probably be passed out by the time you make it home and I don't fuck sleeping chicks. I sat her down on the back seat of the van. And I'm here with the woman who's helped you all night, no matter how rude you were. Mandy's eyes widened along with her mouth as I slid the door closed and ducked my head into the passenger window. Thanks for taking care of her, Miss Nancy, I said as I fished my wallet out. Here's my card and $50. That's not enough with at least a 20% tip. Give me a call and I'll take care of you, okay? Miss Nancy took the cash and card with a wide smile. Sure thing, honey. She tucked the money in her bra and gave us both a wave. Take care of my girl, she called as she drove away. My girl. Now why the fuck did that sound so good? You didn't have to do that, Dell said, interrupting my crazy thoughts. I was gonna have her charge it to my account. I turned to her with a grin. You have a tab with the cab company? Dell shrugged. I don't believe in drinking and driving. I shook my head as I moved closer, until her spicy scent was thick enough to cloud my head and the heat of her body close enough to burn me through our clothes. Why did you do all that? I asked, my voice low and meant only for her. Dell shrugged again as she looked up at me. I just thought if that was my sister, I want someone to help her too. I took another step, my feet moving on their own like I was stuck in her gravitational pull, like I had no choice but to get as close as I could. Most women wouldn't have done what you just did. I'm not most women, she whispered, her face only inches from mine. I dipped my head closer and smiled. Thank fuck, I muttered before I stole the kiss I'd been thinking about all day. And goddamn, it was better than I'd imagined. Her lips were soft and full, and so fucking perfect as I kissed her harder. She smelled like moonshine and cinnamon, and I knew I'd have her scent on me for days. My hands found her hips and I dragged her closer, so close she could feel exactly what this one little kiss had the power to do to me. Dell's breath caught in her lungs for a moment before she reached up and pulled me closer. My palms drifted to her ass like they'd wanted to for hours. Felt just as fucking flawless as it looked. She pulled away, but I kept my lips on her, across her jaw and down her neck. I trailed kisses while she fought to catch her breath. We should get a cab, too, I murmured against her racing pulse. Dell giggled and stepped out of my hold, breaking my contact entirely. I don't think so, Romeo, she said before grabbing my arm and towing me back toward Jack's. You owe me a dance. Chapter 6. Dell. Hello. His voice was so deep, even when he was whispering, that it catapulted me straight from my dream of having a pool party with the Beatles and back to reality. Hey Theo, are you busy? A small female voice replied. The bed dipped as his weight was removed, and footsteps thumped across the floor. No, I'm not busy. What's going on? He whispered again as he closed the bedroom door behind him. I didn't want those words to mean anything, but they did. Sure, this was a casual hookup, but damn, what if I wanted morning nookie? If that was off the table, I might as well go back to sleep because it felt too damn early for anything else. And what did the doctor say? I dragged the pillow over my head to muffle his words. I didn't want to eavesdrop on his conversation, especially if it was a personal one. See? That's good. You always worry too much. With a grunt, I rolled to the opposite side of the bed, hoping those extra few inches would quiet his voice and let me get back to sleep. My hopes weren't high though. Did you get the money I sent? Did all the bills get paid? I tossed the pillow off my face with a huff and glared up at the ceiling. It was clear I wasn't getting back to sleep until he was off the phone. My other option was to leave and just go home to my own damn bed, but that required a lot of work. I wasn't prepared to do this early in the morning. Okay, good. Just let me know if you need anything else. He paused for a minute before speaking again. What about the kids? How are they doing while I'm gone? My heart stopped dead in my chest as my blood ran cold. Kids? I strained to hear her response, but it was too faint. I miss them too. Tell them I'll be home soon, he said, the smile clear in his voice. I jerked upright in bed, my pulse pounding in my eardrums. It was almost loud. Enough to drown out his next words, but not quiet. Come on, baby. It's just a couple more months. If you miss me that much, I can always fly you out. My stomach gurgled and I had to swallow past the lump in my throat. It felt like I was about to lose all that moonshine I drank last night, and I knew from past experience that shit burned on the way back up. Beneath the alcohol that wanted to make a reappearance was an anger so deep it felt embedded in my bones. How dare he spend the night with me when he's got someone else at home? How dare he look at me with those eyes that made promises he couldn't keep? He had a wife. He had kids. He had a family somewhere waiting for him to come home, and he was here fucking around with me. He was whispering pet names to her while I lay naked in the next room. Shame filled my body, eating away at my stomach like acid. But beyond that, I was furious. For myself, for that poor woman, for his innocent children. He didn't deserve any of us. I glanced around the room, looking for an exit as I slithered out of bed. With a wince, I remembered my clothes were out there somewhere and therefore getting left behind. I mourned the loss of my favorite jeans for a moment. Before I searched the room for something to wear, I came up with a t-shirt and a pair of boxers that still smelled like him, even beneath the detergent. Thankfully, I'd retrieved my phone sometime in the middle of the night when he'd fallen asleep, and I'd been able to escape his talented hands for a minute. Just thinking of the past 12 hours I'd spent with him was enough to send a shiver down my spine, but that was the only reaction I allowed myself. Despite how good the man was in bed, he was a liar and a cheater, and I didn't have time for either. I tapped a few buttons on my phone and ordered myself an Uber as I made my way across the room to the only window. We were 2 stories high, but the alley was deserted at this time, and I knew I could jump it easily. I've been lonely without you too. This time I really did gag. I ripped the curtains open and unlocked the window as quietly as I could with so much violence racing through me. The need to storm out there and confront him warred viciously with the desire to turn tail and run. I didn't want another chance to look into his bright eyes that even now stirred up feelings I didn't want. It was wrong, and I felt dirty just thinking about it. He was someone else's man. I had no business thinking of him that way anymore. Damn it, my skin still tingled just knowing he was in the next room. I needed to be stronger than that. And since I didn't know how to do that to his face, I was running away. I slid the window open and stuck a leg through it. Okay, I love you. Give the kids a kiss for me. Those last words from him started a fire strong enough to propel me through the open window. I fell through the air silently and landed on my bare feet in the dirty alley with a soft thump. Gross, I whispered as I pulled my foot out of a puddle. I glanced up at the window I just jumped from one last time before I turned and ran for the street. My feet were being cut up on the rough pavement, but I didn't stop. Hell, it felt like I could have run all the way back to Pack Lands and not feel it. But that would have taken too long, and I didn't want to be left alone with my thoughts all that time. I made it to the deserted street just as I heard him call my name. My eyes squeezed closed as the urge to answer him fought with the last remnants of my good sense. Thankfully, my Uber pulled up before I lost the battle, and I slid into the back seat instead. I could still hear Theo yelling my name as the driver pulled away from the curb. My hands shook as I clasped them in my lap and stared out the front window. Last night might have been one of the best in my entire life. Every moment with Theo was etched in my brain in a way I knew had to be permanent. Surprisingly, it wasn't just the sex, although that had been soul-shattering. It was him. His easy smile, even when I was giving him hell. The way he seemed to understand without me having to explain anything. How every time he looked at me, I knew he really saw me, more than anyone else in my entire life. But he belonged to someone else. I just have to pretend like there wasn't this hollow feeling in my chest. Forget the way my skin buzzed when he touched me. Ignore the fact that I might never feel that kind of a connection with anyone else ever again. My head fell back with a thud against the seat, and I squeezed my eyes closed. Theo was a mistake, but it was an honest one. There was no way I could have known he had a wife and kids. That fact didn't do much for the guilt eating away at my insides, but it was still true. I still spent a long 20 minutes berating myself before the driver pulled up to my steep driveway. You can drop me off here. It's hard to turn around. Or you might accidentally run into a loose werewolf. I thanked him and climbed out before starting the long walk up to the lodge. When the Uber was out of sight, I took off running. The gravel bit deep into the bottoms of my feet, but I didn't care. It almost felt like I deserved the Pain for everything I did with some poor woman's husband last night. Images of exactly what we did and how many times we did it flashed through my mind too quick to stop. I shook my head and ran faster. When I finally made it to the downspout right next to my bedroom window, I silently thanked my brother for installing stainless steel gutters as I climbed them. There was no way aluminum would have held my ass up. I crawled through my window and collapsed on the floor. It had been years since I'd snuck into my room like that, but this was a special circumstance. And besides, I didn't think Miss Elsie would appreciate me tracking bloody footprints through the house. With a wince, I inspected the bottoms of my feet and knew I needed to clean them out before I crawled into bed and tried to sleep this disaster off. Dragged myself off the floor and pulled the borrowed shirt over my head. As I did, his scent filled my nose again and my heart started to pound. I grit my teeth and clenched the soft cotton in my hands as I debated burning the damn thing. With a growl, I stuffed it into the trash and turned for the bathroom. I took my time in the shower, washing every inch of my body twice, but I could still smell him, like he was under my skin, like he'd branded me with his scent. With another growl, I turned the water off and got out, the anger rising in my system again. I found the first aid kit and covered my feet in gauze before wrapping the towel around me and limping out of the bathroom. I'd just fallen onto my bed when someone started banging on my door. "Del, are you up?" "Go away, Evie," I muttered into my pillow. "Delilah McCoy," she yelled. "I don't have time for your nonsense today." "Go away," I said louder this time. Evie was quiet for a moment, but I should have known that didn't mean anything. Good. And I shouldn't have been surprised when the door swung open and she stormed in. "If you've got someone in here, they've got to go," she said as she stopped in the middle of the room with her lids squeezed shut and her hands on her hips. I rolled my eyes and flopped back on my bed. "There's no one in here. I don't even want you to be in here." "That's too bad. We've got a lot to do today and I need you up and caffeinated and useful." "Let's go," she said as she walked over to my windows and yanked the curtains open. I pulled the pillow over my head. "What is wrong with you? It's like 6 in the morning. Actually, it's almost 7, which means we already have less than 12 hours to go. Time to start moving." She made her way to my dresser and started tossing clothes onto the bed. Chop chop. My anger at Theo mixed with my sleepless night and early morning until it bubbled over and I aimed it at my sister. "Evie, why the hell are you in my room and what do you want?" I screamed over her string of demands. She turned wide blue eyes full of hurt toward me and the guilt was instantly so thick I thought it would choke me. But Evie was tougher than that, so when she blinked, the vulnerability was gone. In its place was the Spitfire who didn't take shit from anyone, not even me. "Delilah McCoy, it is your sister's mating ceremony today. You need to get your ass up and get moving, or so help me." My stomach fell as I stared at her. Oh shit, I forgot. I just got home. How the hell could I forget Callie's mating ceremony? Granted, I did have 3 sisters to keep track of, but still, someone getting mated was a big deal. Even if it seemed like we'd had a lot of that happening lately. "Let me guess," Evie said with a roll of her eyes. "Did you go home with another random human guy?" My gut twisted. "No," I croaked before clearing my throat. "He was a wolf. Actually." Evie turned to me slowly. "Oh." I shrugged and scooted off my bed. "Yeah." My tone was light and non-committal, but I already knew it didn't matter. Evie smelt blood in the water. And she wasn't leaving without her share. "Is he from a local pack?" she asked as she picked up a discarded pair of heels off my floor. My steps faltered as I realized I had no idea where he was from. Hell, I knew how old he was when he got his first guitar and its make and model. Just like I knew what his favorite song to cover was. He'd also told me all about his baseball cap collection and how many stadiums he's been to around the country. But his hometown never came up. I don't know, actually. I don't think he's from around here, but he took me back to an apartment, so who knows? I hoped my words were nonchalant enough because my hands shook as I pulled on my clothes and all I was doing was talking about him. Praying for Evie to drop the subject was, of course, useless. "Delilah," she said, her arms now full of clothes from around my room. "Did you even know the man's full name?" I turned to her with a wide grin. "Actually, yes. It's Theo Moore. So suck it." Evie rolled her eyes at me before narrowing them. "Why does that sound familiar?" I turned around with a shrug and finished getting dressed. I don't know, and I don't care. He's an asshole and I never have to see him again. My sister dumped my shoes and clothes on a chair in the corner before she started folding. What did he do? The bile was rising in the back of my throat, and the last thing I wanted to do was talk about this. In fact, if I could have just scrubbed the whole night from my mind, I would. I didn't need to remember how easily we fit together, how quickly he learned my body. I shook my head hard and turned away. He didn't do anything to me. It was really his wife and kids he fucked over when he took me home. Evie gasped and my stomach twisted at all the disappointment I heard in that one little sound. Del, she breathed. I winced and turned to face her again. I didn't know, Evie. I swear. She shook her head slowly and opened her mouth to speak when my phone started ringing. It took me a moment to find it buried in my unmade bed, and when I didn't recognize the number. Hello. I answered anyway. Is this Del McCoy? This is. Hey Delaware. This is Mason, the manager of Phase. We're holding callback auditions this afternoon and we'd love to have you. My heart leapt into the back of my throat as I turned to Evie. Her expression wasn't excited though. Callie's ceremony, she whispered, and my heart fell right back into place. Sure. Yeah, of course. When is it? Today at noon. Can you make it? I turned pleading eyes back to my sister, who gave me a reluctant nod. Yes. I yelled into the phone a little too loud. Yes, I said again at a better volume. I'll be there. Chapter 7. Theo. Del, I whispered against her bare chest. Wake up. Her face didn't move an inch. Or actually maybe her mouth was more slack than it was before. As I watched, she took a deep breath and snored so loud it rumbled through me. I bit my lip to stop the laugh that wanted to escape. Even though I'd been trying to wake her up a moment ago, I didn't want to anymore. She was so peaceful, so beautiful even with the drool on her chin. My smile was so wide it hurt as I stared at her and continued to find new things to appreciate, like her dark lashes that were so long they brushed her cheeks, or the 9 little freckles that dusted her nose. I reached out to place my hand on her chest, and the buzzing from her skin tickled my palm. Could she feel that? Did it tingle when she touched me too? Or was Del some sort of live wire that went around electrocuting everyone? My ringtone blared through the quiet room, and Del snored again before rolling over. I stared at the back of her pink-streaked head for a moment before reaching for my phone with a sigh. Back to reality for me. Hello. Hey Theo. My sister's voice broke through the remaining sleepiness in my brain. Are you busy? I hadn't heard from Louisa in a week, and I knew that meant nothing good. We didn't usually go that long, but she never answered the phone when she was at her lowest. I didn't know if it was the depression making her think she wanted to be alone or if it was my sister sparing us from seeing her like that, but it didn't really matter. I hated losing my twin for any amount of time. I climbed off the bed as carefully as I could and hurried across the room. No, I'm not busy. What's going on? I whispered as I closed the door behind me. She sighed and that small sound sent a dagger right through my heart. Mom thinks I need to change my dosage again, but I'm worried it's just going to make things worse. And what did the doctor say? She huffed this time, and the sound, although similar to her sigh, had a lot more fire in it, which warmed my heart. Dr. Kilburn said it'll either get better or it'll do nothing, so there's no reason not to try, she deadpanned. See? That's good. You always worry too much. Louisa has battled depression since we were teenagers, but only recently sought help from a doctor. Thankfully, we've been able to find a psychiatrist from a pack in Illinois that was willing to work with us, but my sister was still hesitant. Sorry, I worry about the drugs I put into my body, she muttered. I could feel the conversation spiraling, so I changed the subject to something equally important while she was still willing to talk to me. Did you get the money I sent? Did all the bills get paid? Yeah, I saw the transfer in my account on Monday and gave Mom my debit card to pay shit. Okay, good. Just let me know if you need anything else. Theo, you send more than enough every month. Quit worrying. I ignored her. What about the kids? How are they doing while I'm gone? Louisa huffed out an exaggerated breath, and I was already smiling. Well, couple days ago, Princess Leia over here ate a whole damn bullfrog. I mean, one swallow and the thing was gone. Of course she doesn't want to eat her dinner that night because she's sick to her stomach and throwing up all over. The house. So what does Luke do? He eats all her dinner, gets sick to his stomach, and is throwing up alongside her. I had to press my lips together to hold in the chuckle, but a small one escaped anyway. I swear these dogs act up more when you're gone, she groused. I miss them too. Tell them I'll be home soon. Not soon enough. Ah, come on, baby, I said, our mom's nickname for her slipping out. It's just couple more months. If you miss me that much, I can always fly you out. I'm not a baby, Theo, she said between gritted teeth. I sighed. She might not be a baby, but she was the baby of the family. Despite the fact we were twins, she was born 30 minutes after me, which was in the early hours of the next day. Because of that, our mom always called me her big boy and Louisa her baby girl. Somewhere along the line, the whole family started calling her baby, and she'd allowed it for the most part. I should have known better on a day like this. I just miss you, she confessed. It's not the same when you're gone. Mom doesn't get it like you do. It's just been lonely without my other half. I squeezed my eyes closed as my gut clenched tight. It was never easy leaving my sister behind. There'd even been times in the past when she'd toured with us, but things had gotten harder for her in recent years. It was better for everyone when she lived a more stable life. It didn't mean I didn't miss the hell out of her. It didn't mean there wasn't a huge hole in my life where she was supposed to be. I did my best to swallow past the lump in my throat. I've been lonely without you too. My sister was my best friend in the world, and it was so hard to be away from her, but it was necessary. Our mom worked, but it was minimum wage, and Louisa could hardly get out of bed most days. It was my job to support them, and I couldn't do that by just playing small gigs around Nashville. The need to take care of my mom and sister has always been the driving force behind everything I did. For me, Phase wasn't just a band. It was a way out of the poverty I'd grown up in. It was a guarantee that I'd never have to hear my sister's stomach growl all night because we couldn't afford dinner. It was my only chance to make a better life for my family, and nothing was more important. So, despite how much Louisa missed me or how much I'd rather be home with her, I was going to continue this tour. I had to. Louisa cleared her throat, and my heart clenched in my chest. I knew that meant she was close to tears, and the sound tore me up. I should let you go, she finally said. I swallowed hard. Okay, I love you. Give the kids a kiss for me. I was almost positive she hung up before I was done talking, but I wasn't mad. Louisa had enough to deal with. If talking to me was making it worse, then I'd just shut the hell up. I tossed my phone onto the coffee table as a loud thud came from the bedroom. With a smile I headed back there, positive Dell rolled off the bed or tripped over something and fell. But when I opened the door, the first thing I found was a picture frame that had been knocked onto the floor. The next was the open window, and finally, the empty bed. My stomach fell through my body as I scanned the room for Delaware. I ran into the bathroom, but it was empty too. And even though I knew she hadn't come out of the bedroom, I checked the rest of the apartment, but she wasn't there either. I made it back to the open window in the bedroom and stuck my head out. We were 2 stories high. Would she really jump it? I scanned the alley below carefully, not spotting her until I glanced toward the street and caught a flash of pink. Dell. She froze in place, and my heart thumped loud in my chest as I waited for her to turn around. As the seconds ticked by, my pulse slowed until it almost stopped altogether. A silver car pulled up in front of her, and she got in without even glancing toward me. Dell. I tried again as I struggled to pull myself out the window. My phone started ringing in the next room as her ride pulled away from the curb and drove off. I stared wide-eyed at the place I'd last seen her as I fought to catch my breath. What the fuck just happened? The hottest night of my life just ended with the girl jumping out of a fucking window to get away from me. Who the fuck does that? What was so bad that she couldn't face me and walk out the goddamn door like a normal person? My ringtone started up again, so I yanked myself back inside and slammed the window shut. The glass shattered and the violence in my system only grew. Before I could put my fist through the goddamn thing, I turned around and headed for my phone. Could have been Louisa, and I didn't want to miss it. Again. What? I snarled into the receiver. Good morning to you too, my manager Mason replied. I gotta disagree with you on that one. What do you want? I want you to call a cab for whoever you brought home last night and get your ass downtown. I managed to get us a rehearsal space for a few hours this morning. His manager voice was tolerable on a good day, but this wasn't a good day. Why the fuck would you assume I brought someone home last night? Mason paused for a moment, and I could almost hear his eyes rolling. Because you're Theo Moore, and if your dick had an odometer it would be broken by now. I ground my teeth hard and ignored his bullshit commentary on my sex life. I'm alone. Where's rehearsal? I'll text you the address. Be there by 8. We have the place until 11. And then we need to get across town to the callback auditions by noon. My stomach flipped deep inside me. Callbacks are today? He was quiet for another long moment, and I knew he was rolling his eyes. Again. Theo, we're leaving first thing in the morning. We have a show in Raleigh tomorrow night. I really needed to pay better attention to our schedule. How many have you narrowed it down to? That wasn't the real question I wanted to ask, but I figured it made more sense to start with a throwaway so he didn't become suspicious. We have 5 coming back, but we think we have it narrowed down to just 2. Or 3. I would have known all this if I hadn't skipped out of the auditions the moment Dell was done performing. I swallowed hard. Which ones? Mason sighed as I heard papers shuffling on his end. Ryan Bauer, the Jenkins brothers, and Del McCoy. Her name ripped through me like a barbed wire, and I gripped the phone tighter. Okay, I croaked before clearing my throat. Okay, I like those. Acts 2. Yeah, everyone seemed to agree on these 3 surprisingly. Was there one that stood out to you? I squeezed my eyes closed as I remembered just how much she stood out. How no matter where she went she turned heads. How my hand shook knowing I'd been lucky enough to get her alone for one whole night. They were all pretty good. I think any of them would be a great fit. Mason sighed. Yeah, you're right. But we both know it would be easiest if we went with the werewolf chick. My stomach sank as I turned to glare at the phone. Don't just hire her because she's a werewolf. That's insulting. I wouldn't hire her just because she's a wolf if she sucked. But Dell's good. And the easy choice. Can't really go wrong there. A foreign outrage raced through me and I desperately tried to beat it back. Dell didn't need me to fight her battles. Hell, Dell didn't even want to fucking say goodbye to me. Why was I starting shit with my manager just to defend her? Besides, there was a much bigger war I needed to contend with and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The truth was, as long as Dell didn't completely blow her callback audition, she was getting hired to open for my band. That had the potential to cause all kinds of complications. The first of which was, she still had no idea she'd auditioned for my band. Yesterday, I had a feeling our night would have gone much differently if she'd known. I tried to tell her a dozen times in the hours we spent together, but it never felt right. Or maybe I was just too chicken shit to piss her off. Things were so easy and uncomplicated. If she knew the truth, everything would have been different. It might have been selfish to keep it to myself, but it was done now. All that was left were the repercussions. Honestly, that wasn't even the biggest hurdle. The real problem we had to deal with was we spent the night together and it went south. Now we'd be on tour for months and I literally couldn't imagine anything more awkward. More. Are you still there? I jumped and lifted the phone to my ear. Yeah, I'm here. Good. I need you to shit, shower, shave, and be at the address I texted you by 8. Got it. Mason, your obsession with my bowels is disturbing. He paused for a moment again and I knew it was to roll his eyes. Goodbye, he said before hanging up. My lips twitched with a smile that was short-lived as I looked around the empty bedroom. I could still smell Dell's spicy cinnamon scent in the air, and already it was making my pants tighten. Last night was amazing, but I needed to accept it was over now. By the end of the day she'd be on the payroll, which meant she was off limits. But how the fuck was I supposed to get through months of touring with her and keep my hands to myself? Roman tried to warn me to not get involved, but I didn't listen. I couldn't. Had to have her, and nothing could have stopped me. How was I supposed to know one hit wouldn't be enough? How was I supposed to know it wasn't just her curves that called to me, but also everything inside her? She was smart and hilarious and so damn sweet sometimes. She was impossible to resist. Somehow I'd have to find a way. I tossed my phone down again and tried to focus. With a look around the messy bedroom, I knew I wouldn't be able to do that until it was clean again. When the bed was made and the picture frame returned to its place, I headed into the living room to tackle that mess. Clothes were strewn across the floor, a lamp had been knocked off an end table, and a whole wall of pictures were crooked. The sight made my eye twitch before I got to work. Del's scent seemed to get stronger as I moved throughout the room until I came to the pile of her clothes. I picked up the silky shirt she'd been wearing, and the jeans that had encased her ass so beautifully, it made me hard just thinking about it. I squeezed the clothes in my hand and turned to find my guitar case, picked up my instrument and crammed Del's stuff behind it, figuring I could give them back to her after auditions today. Just thinking about seeing her again made my hands shake as I replaced my guitar and closed the case. When I turned around, I spotted a small scrap of black lace in the middle of the room and my whole body shook. I slowly picked up Del's panties and gripped them in my fist. With a deep inhale, I smiled. Yeah, these are coming too.